Welcome to our deep dive into Swaraj Engines Limited's Q3 FY25 results. We've got a whole stack of press releases and, financial statements here to go through. And I think our mission here is to make sure that everyone listening walks away feeling like a Swaraj Engines expert. This company primarily supplies engines to Mahindra and Mahindra Swaraj division, which is one of India's leading tractor manufacturers. So their performance gives us, some clues about how the tractor industry in India is doing overall. And let me tell you, they've got some really exciting news to share.
Yeah, they've hit some really impressive milestones this quarter. Their Q3 engine sales reached a record high of 34,415 units, and their profit before tax also set a new record. So it seems like they're fire on all cylinders, pun intended.
Absolutely. But I think instead of just throwing numbers at you, let's break down what these figures actually mean. For example, their revenue from operations jumped to 345.50 crores this quarter, compared to 279.55 crores in the same period last year. That's a pretty significant increase. I'm curious what's driving this growth.
Well, this revenue jump likely reflects the strong demand for tractors in India. Remember, Swaraj Engine's primary customer is Mahindra and Mahindra's Swaraj division, a major player in the tractor market. So this suggests that farmers are investing in new equipment, which could be a sign of a healthy agricultural sector.
Okay, that makes sense. What about their profitability? I see their Q3 profit before tax is 42.82 crores. What does that tell us about how they're managing their business?
Well, this record PBT is a strong indicator of their operational efficiency. Um, they're managing to keep costs under control even while sales are increasing. This could be due to a lot of factors like their strong supply chain relationships or efficient manufacturing processes. It's definitely something to keep an eye on to see if they can sustain these margins going forward.
Okay, so they've got record sales and impressive profitability. But is this just a one-time thing? Or is it part of a larger trend?
Actually, their 9-month performance is equally impressive. They achieved their highest ever 9-month sales and profit for the period ending December 31st, 2024. To give you a sense of scale, total engine sales for those 9 months reached 123,226 units.
Wow, that's a lot of engines. What about their profit for those 9 months?
Their PBT for the 9 months hit 161.83 crores, which is a 17.5% increase year over year. And their profit after tax for the 9 months climbed to 120.56 crores, reflecting a 17.4% increase year over year.
So this consistent performance really paints a picture of a company that's on a roll. They're not just riding a temporary wave, they're demonstrating sustained growth.
Exactly. And when you look at their earnings per share, the story becomes even more compelling. For Q3, their basic earnings per share stands at 26.3 a day, but for the 9 months, it jumps to an impressive 99.25.
Okay, I'll admit I need a quick ELI5 on earnings per share.
Sure, basically, earnings per share represents the portion of a company's profit allocated to each outstanding share of common stock. In simpler terms, it tells you how much profit the company made for each share you own.
So in this case, for every share someone holds in Swaraj Engines, they earned 26.30 during this last quarter, and a whopping 99.25 over the past 9 months. That's a pretty good indicator of their profitability and potential return for investors.
Right, and it highlights how this consistent growth translates into value for shareholders.
Okay, so we've established that they're doing incredibly well financially, but what about the details behind the numbers? How do we know that these figures are reliable?
That's a great question. It's important to note that their financial statements have undergone a limited review by their statutory auditors. This provides a level of assurance about the accuracy and reliability of the information.
Okay, that's definitely reassuring. Anything else we should know about their financial structure?
Well, Swaraj Engines has a fairly straightforward setup. They have no subsidiaries, associates, or joint ventures. This means their financial performance is a direct reflection of their core engine business, which I think makes it easier to understand.
Okay, so no complex corporate webs to untangle. I like that. And what about their debt situation? Any red flags there?
None whatsoever. The company has no outstanding defaults on loans or debt securities. This points to responsible financial management and puts them in a strong position for future growth. They're not weighed down by excessive debt, giving them more flexibility to invest and expand.
Okay, that's another big plus. So far, it seems like a very positive picture. But I did notice something interesting in their statement on deviation or variation for proceeds of public issue, rights issue, preferential issue, qualified institutions, placement, etc.
Oh, what caught your eye?
Well, everything in that statement is marked not applicable. What does that tell us about their financial strategy?
That's a sharp observation. It suggests that Swaraj Engines hasn't engaged in those types of fundraising activities. They haven't issued new shares or taken on large amounts of debt through public offerings or private placements.
So why is that? Is it a sign of their financial strength? Or could it be something else?
It could be a combination of factors. On one hand, it definitely suggests they've been able to fund their growth organically, without needing to tap into external sources of capital. That's a strong indicator of their profitability and efficient use of resources.
But could it also be a sign that they're being overly cautious? Maybe missing out on opportunities to expand more aggressively?
That's a valid point. It's possible that their conservative approach might limit their ability to capitalize on certain growth opportunities. It's something to consider as we delve deeper into their future prospects.
Okay, so we've got a company with a stellar track record, solid financials, and a conservative approach to growth. This raises a lot of interesting questions about their long-term strategy.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. We're not just looking at numbers on a balance sheet. We're trying to understand the story behind them.
Exactly. And that story includes their connection to the broader Indian economy, particularly in rural areas. Their success seems to reflect a healthy agricultural sector, which is a crucial part of India's overall economic picture. But are there any potential challenges on the horizon that could disrupt this positive trend? We'll explore that further in the next part of our deep dive.
So we've seen how Swaraj Engines is thriving, but their success is deeply intertwined with the health of the agricultural sector in India. It kind of begs the question, are there any storm clouds on the horizon that could impact this, sunny picture?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's like we're trying to predict the weather for Swaraj engines. Right now, it looks pretty clear.
Yeah.
But we know that agriculture is vulnerable to all sorts of unpredictable factors.
Exactly. One of the biggest risks is, of course, the monsoon season. A weak monsoon can significantly impact crop yields, and that directly affects farmers' incomes and their ability to invest in new equipment like tractors.
So even if Swaraj Engines keeps making fantastic engines, if the monsoon doesn't cooperate, demand for tractors could drop right. And that would create a ripple effect all the way down the line.
Precisely. And it's not just about the quantity of rainfall, but also the timing and distribution. Too much rain at the wrong time can be just as damaging as too little.
Yeah, it's like this delicate balancing act. And it makes you realize how much of Swaraj Engine's success depends on factors beyond their control. Is there anything else that could throw a wrench in their plans?
Well, another factor to consider is global commodity prices. Fluctuations in the prices of crops like wheat, rice, and cotton can have a huge impact on farmers' profitability. If prices drop, farmers might delay purchases of new equipment, even if their old tractors are, on their last legs.
So even if demand stays strong, fluctuating prices could still squeeze farmers' budgets and affect Swaraj Engine's bottom line. It's a reminder that we can't just look at a company in isolation. We have to consider the global context as well.
Absolutely. And these are just two examples. There are other potential headwinds, like rising input costs for farmers, changes in government policies, even shifts in consumer preferences that could impact the demand for tractors, and consequently, Swaraj Engine's products.
It seems like understanding Swaraj Engine's performance requires a dual lens, one focused on their internal operations and financial health, and another zoomed out to capture the wider economic landscape.
Yeah, I like that analogy. It's like we're using a microscope and a telescope at the same time. We need the close-up view to examine the company's inner workings, but we also need the wide-angle perspective to see how they fit into the larger ecosystem.
Okay, so we've talked about the sunshine and the potential storm clouds. Now I'm curious to dive into a detail that caught my attention earlier. The fact that Swaraj Engines has chosen not to engage in activities like public offerings or rights issues, it seems like a deliberate strategy. But what are the implications of that choice?
That's an excellent question. And it gets to the heart of their long-term growth strategy. By choosing not to raise capital through these methods, they're essentially signaling that they believe they can fund their growth organically, using their existing profits and resources.
So on the one hand, it shows confidence in their ability to generate profits and, manage their finances effectively. But on the other hand, are they potentially limiting their growth potential by not tapping into these additional sources of funding?
That's the million-dollar question. It really depends on how they see their future unfolding. If they're content with steady organic growth, then their current approach might be perfectly suited. However, if they have ambitious expansion plans, they might need to reconsider their strategy.
This reminds me of something we discussed earlier, the global shift towards cleaner, more sustainable technologies. How does this trend factor into Swaraj Engine's long-term outlook?
Yes, that's a crucial point. Currently, Swaraj Engines primarily produces diesel engines. While these engines are reliable and well-suited for the current market, the long-term demand for diesel could be impacted by the rise of electric vehicles and alternative fuels.
So they're in a bit of a tricky spot. They're doing exceptionally well with their current products, but the world is changing, and they might need to adapt to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, it's a classic innovator's dilemma. Do they stick with what they know and excel at, or do they take a risk and invest in new technologies that could disrupt their current success, but secure their future?
It seems like their future hinges on their ability to anticipate and respond to these shifts in the market. Do you think they're prepared for the challenge?
That's tough to say with certainty.
Hmm.
We'd need more insight into their research and development efforts, their investment strategy, and their overall vision for the future.
Yeah.
But one thing's for sure, the decisions they make in the next few years will have a significant impact on their long-term trajectory.
This is where it gets really interesting for anyone following Swaraj engines. We've seen their impressive financial performance, we've analyzed the broader economic context, and now we're getting into these strategic decisions that will shape their destiny.
It's like we've moved from reading the financial statements to trying to decipher the CEO's playbook.
Yeah.
What moves will they make next? What bets are they willing to place on the future?
These are the questions that keep investors up at night, and they're what make following a company's journey so fascinating. But before we get too caught up in speculating about the future, let's bring it back to the present. What are the key takeaways from Swaraj Engine's Q3 performance that our listeners should keep in mind?
I'd say the main takeaways are they're demonstrating strong financial performance with record sales and profits. Their success is closely tied to the health of the Indian agricultural sector. They have a conservative financial strategy, which raises questions about their long-term growth plans. And the global shift towards sustainable technologies poses a potential challenge, and their response will be crucial for their future success.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. We've examined their financials, explored the broader economic landscape, and even delved into their strategic choices. But there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to consider. What does Swaraj Engine's success tell us about the Indian economy as a whole? And what can we learn from their approach to growth and sustainability? Let's tackle those questions in the final part of our deep dive. So we spent this whole deep dive, getting to know Swaraj Engines, their impressive numbers, their connection to the agricultural sector, and even some of the challenges they might face going forward. But I think their story also kind of tells us something bigger about India as well.
Yeah, I agree. On one level, their success is a microcosm of the growth we're seeing in the Indian economy as a whole, especially in rural areas.
Right.
Rising incomes, increased agricultural activity. These are all positive trends that we're seeing reflected in Swaraj Engine's balance sheet.
Right. It's almost like they're a barometer for the rural economy. When they do well, it suggests that farmers are doing well. And that implies a positive ripple effect through those rural communities.
Precisely. But it's not just about the current state of affairs. I think Swaraj Engines also offers a valuable case study in navigating the complexities of growth and sustainability.
Okay. Unpack that for me a little bit. What do you mean?
Well, consider their decision to primarily focus on diesel engines. Yeah. It's a strategy that's worked incredibly well for them so far. Diesel engines are reliable, they're well-suited for agricultural applications, and they've helped Swaraj Engines carve out a really dominant position in the market.
But as we discussed earlier, that reliance on diesel could also become a vulnerability in a world that's increasingly moving towards, cleaner technologies.
Exactly. And that's where the real lesson lies.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just be successful in the present. Companies, especially those operating in industries as dynamic as the automotive sector, really need to have a keen eye on the future. They need to be adaptable, innovative, willing to embrace change, even when it means disrupting their own success.
So in a way, Swaraj Engines is at a crossroads. They've got this proven formula that's brought them a lot of success, but they're also operating in a world that's demanding something different, something cleaner, something more sustainable.
Right. And that's the dilemma facing not just Swaraj Engines, but a lot of companies across various industries. How do you balance current profitability with long-term sustainability? How do you adapt to evolving consumer demands and technological advancements without sacrificing your core strengths?
Yeah. It's a tough balancing act. There's no easy answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think there are valuable lessons to be learned from observing how companies like Swaraj Engines navigate these challenges.
So for our listeners who might be thinking, what does all of this have to do with me? What would you say are the key takeaways from Swaraj Engine's story?
I'd say there are a few key things to consider. First, the importance of understanding context. Whether you're analyzing a company, an industry, or even your own career path, it's so crucial to consider the broader context. What are the larger trends that are shaping the landscape? What are the potential challenges and opportunities on the horizon? The second thing is the power of adaptability. The world is changing at an unprecedented pace. To thrive in this environment, we need to be adaptable, willing to learn new skills, and embrace new ways of thinking. And finally, the need for balance. Achieving sustainable success requires a delicate balancing act. We need to find ways to meet current demands, while also investing in the future.
Those are all really great points. It's a reminder that even though we're diving deep into the specifics of Swaraj engines, the lessons we're uncovering have much broader applications.
And ultimately, that's the goal of these deep dives, to equip you with knowledge, insights, and frameworks that you can apply to your own decisions and understanding of the world around you.
Absolutely. It's been a really fascinating exploration of Swaraj Engines, a company that's much more than just an engine manufacturer. They're a reflection of India's economic journey, a case study in navigating the complexities of growth and sustainability, and a source of valuable lessons for anyone seeking to understand the dynamics of business and innovation in a rapidly changing world.
Indeed. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I would encourage you to keep those gears turning. Continue to explore,
Yeah.
question, and connect the dots. There's always more to learn, and the journey of discovery is just beginning.
So to all our listeners, keep those engines running, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.